Hello and welcome to Overclocking MSI Radeon R9 280X Twin Frozr video tutorial. My name is Alex Morose and I will be your tutor during this video tutorial. During this video tutorial you'll find out how to overclock Radeon R9 280X video card, and it could be by any brand. It could be MSI, XFX, Sapphire, Gigabyte, or Asus. It doesn't matter, or his and any other brands. But in this video tutorial I'm going to use the MSI Radeon 280X basically video card, which is R9 280X, and just want to let you know that I have overclocking experience of video cards since 2000. I overclocked my first video card Voodoo 3 2000. Some of the old school overclockers probably know that video card from 3DFX brand, one of the first brands that introduced the video accelerators to the gamers and to the public, and then later they was bought by NVIDIA, and they just closed the company after that point, NVIDIA. But anyways, this video tutorial requires beginner knowledge and it's designed for the total beginner. I will teach you the basics of the overclocking. Please keep in mind that overclocking video card is on your own risk, and you will be doing it on your own risk, and there is no compensation, physical or virtual, if you will do any damage to video card, to yourself, or to anybody property. I'm not going to compensate for this, and you're doing it on your own risk. So there are some tools and some procedures required, basically some steps for this video tutorial. Let me go ahead and tell you those requirements. Of course, Radeon R9 280X video card is required. I'm going to use as again MSI brand, but you can use any other brand. You can also use the Radeon HD 7970 just because it's based on the same Tahiti GPU, and pretty much Radeon HD 7970 is a Radeon R9 280X. It's pretty much the same video card. I suggest you to download two softwares, just Google for it, and it's MSI Afterburner software, testing software, and also the software that will give you abilities to tweak the frequencies on your GPU and video GDDR5 memory. There is other software that called GPU-Z software. By the way, all those softwares are freeware, just let you know. And GPU-Z software is a nice software where we can track some frequencies and just double make sure that our frequencies are applied to the system, and just see our bandwidth and some other values, which is pretty handy while you're overclocking. Also, there is 2 up to 4 hours required to test the stability, and you need to be brave enough to apply new frequencies to your video card. But keep in mind that software overclocking, and today I will show you just the software overclocking. Software overclocking are 99.99% safe, and during my 13 years of experience of overclocking video cards, I own 27 video cards, and I built about 50 computers to my clients, which I also overclocked. I never saw a failed component from the software overclocking, or if there was a failed component, that manufacturer just didn't want to replace, just basically didn't want to replace that video card, because software overclocking is safe. And if, let's say, your video card will fail on you, you can send it to the manufacturer and you can tell them, look, my video card just failed, and they will replace it for you, because There is no way for them to find out that you're running your video card at higher frequencies than it's supposed to, because software overclocking is available only during the while your system is on, and when you will reboot your system, software overclocking will be cleared, and BIOS will pick up the frequencies on GPU and video memory, which was basically provided by the manufacturer, and then your system will boot with those frequencies. And then if in MSI Afterburner you have that option to remember the frequencies, it will apply the frequencies but only with your operating system. There is no way for anybody else to know those frequencies or know that you overclock your video card if you will do it through the software. Some overclockers doing it through the hardware as well, by basically modifying the transistors and etc., adding some new transistors to the video card, which is we're not going to discuss during this video tutorial, and I'm not consider it very beginner friendly at all. It's more when you will get to the hardcore overclocking, and even I consider myself PC hardware enthusiast and overclocker. I'm not modifying my transistors and not editing the transistors, because what I learned is pretty much not worth it. Software overclocking is the best because it's basically free, and you just get an extra performance, which is up to 5-7 frames per second extra, which is comes free for you, which is nice as well. And why not, right, folks? And please thumbs up for this video tutorial, so I will have the motivation to create some more video tutorials. Please check my video channel of Morose Academy as well, and my alternative YouTube channels, where I will provide a lot of information about overclocking GPU, CPU, video cards, processors, and etc. I already have lots of hardware videos on this topic. Okay folks, let's go ahead and get straight to the business, and let's go ahead and learn how to overclock and learn some basics about the overclocking. Alright folks, and just before we will go ahead and jump into the software, let me just go ahead and give you some basic information about the video card and about the components that on the board of the video card. It is critical information because we're going to apply some values to those components, and I want to go ahead and make sure that you fully understand what are those components, and pretty much will have a visual picture of that. As you can see on the image, I took MSI Twin Frozr R9 280X video card front view photo, and that's the video card that we're going to work with. It's a MSI brand, as you can see, and it's overclock edition. And what is the video card? Video card is a cartridge, and as you can see that you're inserting into the slot PCI Express a slot 16x or 8x if you have more than 2 video cards, and it depends to your motherboard, but mostly it's a PCI Express 16x slot on your motherboard, and pretty much it's look like a cartridge that you're inserting into the motherboard. For those old schoolers that remembers Sega and Nintendo, they know what a cartridge is. It's basically like a cartridge you're inserting into the slot, and this is what is video card such as a Radeon R9 280X. Usually like in 2000, 2002, 2004, video cards was just like a card, but then a video card became powerful, and they received the heatsinks and massive fans, massive heatsinks, and it became kind of like a squarish addition on the video card, and then it turned into a cartridge like this, as you can see over here, that has the heatsink, fans on top of it, and those heatsink basically taking the heat from the GPU and the video RAM, which is in our case GDDR5. So I just decided to go ahead and open the video card. By the way, those photos from the from my other video, which about the R9 280X, but where I will teach you how to lower your temperature by good 5-7 Celsius down, which is excellent results just by replacing the thermal compound. I will put the full video review and tutorial to that video in the video description on this video, so you can go ahead and click on that. Or if you're watching this on a desktop or a computer, I will put it in the end of this video. It will be like a clickable icon. Just click with your left mouse button and it will transfer you straight to that video. And I suggest you to go ahead and watch that video about decreasing the temperature from your GPU and the memory to up to 5-7 Celsius, which is nice video tutorial. But anyways, over here, as you can see, I have the heatsink, which is has those two fans on the bottom of that heatsink, and this part of the heatsink goes straight to the GPU and connected to the GPU through the compound, that silver, as you can see, kind of sticky thing. It's called the thermal compound, and thermal compound basically connecting the heatsink with the GPU and transferring the heat, and that heatsink basically using the fans, and those fans moving away the hot air and then pushing it away. And the GPU is right here, and it's going to be a little chip, not little chip, the biggest chip on the video card, which is Radeon R9 280X, and also covered with thermal compound. And because it needs to be covered with thermal compound, connection between the GPU and the heatsink to transfer the heat. So GPU is not going to burn, and that heat will be just transferred to some heatsink and then moved away. And if you have a good case and airflow in your case, then it will cool it down pretty good. And around it, as you can see, we have a bunch of chips, and usually on some other video cards, not on this particular video card, you're going to see some square chips like this. Let me show it to you, like this, and they're going to go like over here around the GPU, just like this chip right here. It will be VRAM, video memory, which is in our case GDDR5 for the R9 280X video card, and this is our GPU. So we're going to apply some values on the GPU. So what we're going to do, we're going to increase the frequency pulsing on the GPU, which will result in better basically transferring. Much higher frequency of the pulsing will transfer more data through on the GPU through the transistors, and we're going to increase the frequency pulsing on the VRAM, which in our case covered with this another heatsink that will be connected with this heatsink and transfer the heat away, which is nice design, by the way, on this Twin Frozr. And we're going to also increase on the memory VRAM GDDR5 frequency to boost some bandwidth, so it's going to be store some information at faster rates, and then it will connect with the GPU, and GPU will process that information with the higher frequency on the GPU, so the pulsing of the data will go through the GPU transistors faster. So this is two keys when you're overclocking your video card. You want to increase the frequency on the GPU, and you want to increase frequency on the memory, and it will result in a better performance. And by increasing the frequency on the GPU and memory, basically you need to increase the voltage as well to be able to push that higher pulsing on through those transistors. So you got basic idea if you're a total beginner, what is the GPU, what is the VRAM. In this case, this is not the great case to show you, but it's covered with the heatsink and on the board. So, and this is the board, and this is the heatsink right here. And on all of the R9 280X video cards, it will be heatsink with a fan on it. And I suggest you, in most of the good brands, it will be dual fans on a heatsink, or on some like a Gigabyte it will be triple fans. And I suggest you to get at least dual fan system heatsink on your Radeon R9 200X, which is most of them. But some of the reference cards that was developed directly by AMD will have only one fan, and I'm not suggesting you to use one fan. This is just a little tip for you when you're going to shop for the video card. One fan basically requires that fan rotating at the higher speeds, which will generate basically louder noise from those higher rotations of those fans on a fan. So when you have dual fan system on the heatsink, it will basically can decrease the rotation of those fans and decrease the noise generated by those fans. Always when you shop in the video card, my suggestion for you to go ahead and go with at least dual system fans. And as you can see, design of this video card pretty good. It covered all the components that going to heat up like a VRAM into the heatsink, and then it will be directly connected with the heatsink and transferring the heat to the heatsink and then to the fans and blowing away into the case, and then from case out in your room. So pretty much you got an idea, and let's go ahead and move on. And now we will go ahead and manipulate with the frequencies on the GPU and the video RAM, which is GDDR5, to increase the performance. Alright folks, and I'm assuming that you downloaded the MSI Afterburner and GPU-Z. Let's go ahead and run the GPU-Z. So GPU-Z basically has a lot of values that are useful for overclockers. Let me go ahead and demonstrate you some. You can see GPU tech process, GPU die size, GPU transistor count, and you can see the BIOS version, and you can save the BIOS version. And as again, this is the MSI R9 280X. Number of ROPs, bus interface, shaders unified. This is important because on all of those will be 2048. Pixel fill rate. This is important value because those pixel fill rate and textual fill rate will change during our overclocking, and we will increase those values. This is how we will receive, and bandwidth as well, memory bandwidth. This is how we will receive the performance out of our overclocking. As you can see, GPU clock and default clock are the same, and I'm running two video cards today, but it's just the same. But basically default clock will keep the default clock by the factory, and GPU clock will be changed during our overclocking. Okay, I just run the MSI Afterburner, and in MSI Afterburner, the first thing what you can see, the first thing what you want to do actually to apply your fan to 60%. This is the first thing what you want to do, and it's an auto, and you want to click on auto, switch to manual mode, and apply about 70-60%. This is my suggestion. 70 will be safe, but 60 will be a little bit quiet, but 70 just to be safe. And also check your temperature. Before you're going to overclock, go ahead and run MSI Afterburner and play your games about an hour, one of your favorite games about an hour or two, and check the temperature. Make sure you enable the sensor monitoring through the MSI Afterburner and show it on your display. And how to do so I will show you in the end of the video. So you can see pretty much you can adjust the fan rotation speed and then apply those values. Always click the apply button to apply those values. 60 will be just as good for my taste, because I don't want to go too noisy, and 60 is just a good kind of quiet video card in your case. And that 60% rotation fan speeds are just good for my taste. Okay, the second thing what you want to start with to apply in the GPU, and you just saw I just applied the GPU to 1090 and click apply, and now I'm just applying the memory clock to 1550, and you can see the difference right here in GPU clock versus the default clock. There is a difference. Also, there is a voltage for R9 280X, and you want to put it all the way to 1190, or I would say 1200 to be safe. Keep in mind that this increasing voltage, basically you're increasing more voltage to allow more pulsing and frequencies, and it will heat up your video card because more voltage will go over the GPU, and basically it's increasing the micro voltage on the GPU. 1.2 is 1200 is safe voltage, micro voltage. Okay, core clock, you can do 1100, and most of those video cards will take this overclock and be stable. But as again, not all video cards are the same, but 1100, this is kind of default. You can try and it probably will work out with 1190 microvolts. And when you overclocking, just go ahead and bring your memory clock to 1500 for now, just to default factory settings, and start with the GPU overclocking. This is important when you're going to troubleshoot, because if your video card will freeze up and you overclock your GPU and memory, there is no way for you to find out which component is exactly needs to be decreased with the frequency. And when you just overclocking the GPU, your test, in our case is combustor. If it will freeze up, I know exactly this is the GPU, and I can lower my frequencies or I can apply more voltage. But I'm not suggesting you to go above 1200 microvolts, especially if you're a beginner. So keep that in mind. And right now you can see my temperature load. I have the 2 video cards. In your case, probably going to show 1 video card. 7970 is basically showing the R9 280X with the earlier drivers. Just want to let you know. So don't freak out. Even if in your case it will show the 7970, it is 7970 actually GPU, but AMD just rename it to R9 280X, and new drivers will display R9 200X. But in this case, with the beta drivers, it's showing 7970. You can see the GPU load on the left side, just because I have 2 GPUs showing 2 stats, but in your case will be only 1, and pretty much run this combustor about an hour or 2, and bring the maximum heat on your video card. Keep your eye on temperature, and as well, if it will freeze up, then you want to lower your frequency on the GPU by 10. And if you're running 1200 microvolts, and try it again, and if it will be stable, here we go, you got your perfect GPU time clock. In my case it will be 1120, but some video cards can be 1130, 1140, 1150. Even I heard on some of the Asus and Sapphire cards you can go up to 1200 megahertz on a GPU. So when you will find out the maximum frequency of the maximum stable frequency, of course you wanna adjust the frequency, and then you want to test it. In our case I'm using the combustor, but I suggest you to use combustor and all your favorite games as well. Then start with the memory. Apply, I would say go with 1550, will be stable at this moment, and play some games, see if it's stable. There is no artifacts like some lines or dots on your screen. If not, then just go ahead and apply the memory frequency by 20 megahertz, and within steps by 20 megahertz, and test it again, and again with steps by 20 megahertz, test it again, and again with steps by 20 megahertz, test it again, until you will find out your maximum. If it will show up some dots and lines, just go back to 20 megahertz. If it's not going to fix it, go back again in step by 20 megahertz and find the stable frequency for your memory. After that point, you will find out your GPU and the memory stable frequencies. As you can see, I'm testing with combustor like in few minutes, so I'm not suggesting you to do so. You want to test your overclock at least 1-2 hours to make sure it's stable, and make sure it's going to be bring the maximum heat, and you want to keep your eye on temperature as well. Pretty much you will see it will freeze up on 1130, just because I didn't put 1200 microvolts voltage, and it freeze up, and program crash or freeze up. That means that GPU problem most likely, and artifacts and dots on the screen most likely it's going to be a memory problem. So you want to go back on your GPU by 10 megahertz, or you want to apply your micro voltage higher, and 1200 will be just fine with 1120. But just want to let you know, if it's not going to freeze up, then we're fine. As again, it's not 1200 freeze up, we're not fine. What solution? If I'm not willing to apply more micro voltage, I can lower it by 10 megahertz on my GPU clock, which is core clock. GPU clock, as again, when I'm saying GPU clock, I meant the core clock, so keep that in mind. And you can use these techniques not only with the MSI Afterburner. You can open your ATI drivers with the right click on your desktop and find the performance tab. Go under the performance and you will see the GPU core clock, memory frequency clock, micro voltage. Not in AMD, not on all cards will show the micro voltage adjustments, but you will also see the fan speed. You can use the same methods and techniques to apply those settings and overclock your video card, not only from the MSI Afterburner but through the other softwares as well. So what you want to keep your eye on: core clock, frequency clock, and also you can see I have 2 video cards in here. And also, if you're using the MSI Afterburner tool, you can enable in on-screen display by, like I'm doing right now. So you will see those values when you're playing the games or anything which DirectX or OpenGL surfaces is open, like software, games, test benchmarks. You can see my bandwidth is increased versus the default values, of course. And here we go. Texture fill rate increased and pixel fill rate increased. This is what give us that performance, because we increase the voltage and we increase the impulsing. So now the signal traveling by those tunnels at faster rates, and this is what increase our texture fill rate, pixel fill rate, and the bandwidth as well. So, and you can always bring it back by clicking reset button, and reset button over here or reset button in your drivers.